Welcome to the Northern Affinity video podcast. During this session, we will be having an unedited discussion with an expert. And what I'll be planning to do is, during our discussion, get them to teach me something. Teach me about something that's of interest, but also they are an expert in. I'm Michael Edwards and I'm the founder of the Northern Affinity. And I will tap into our wonderful community to bring you along on my drive for self-improvement and my desire to learn. So please connect with me on various social media platforms, whether it's LinkedIn or Instagram or Twitter. And I'd love to hear from you what subjects you'd like to learn more about, or what subjects you think it'd be good for me to learn about. So please, get in contact and let me know. All the details will be in the show notes, and you can send me an email or contact me via the various platforms. I really hope you enjoy the show. So I'm delighted to say we're joined by Sarah Small on the latest edition of the video podcast. So firstly, welcome, Sarah.
Thanks, Michael. Lovely to be here.
And so today we're going to talk about scaling businesses and building a team. Now, probably a good place to start, Sarah, is just to kind of find out a little bit about you and what you do before we go into that conversation. So do you want to kind of introduce you, what you do, and we can go from there?
Sure. So I run a business called A Digital Me, and we are a team of virtual business support specialists in different areas. And we work with scaling businesses to help them to grow their business, scale their business, get things nice and efficient behind the scenes, and basically take away the pressure of doing everything for themselves and not necessarily knowing how to do things. So it allows them to focus on that vision and the growth, whilst we take care of things behind the scenes. And that looks like different things depending on what businesses need. It might be strategy, it might be management and implementation, or it might be the general day-to-day business support.
That's great. And everyone who knows me knows that I have a saying, which everybody needs a Sarah. I know I certainly do. So scaling your business, building a team, what I guess the good place to start is what the issues that people have around this. And obviously everyone's different. It depends on skills and knowledge and all that kind of stuff, but kind of just generally from your experience, what issues do people have that they need support with?
So what we often find when working with clients is that somebody's doing really well. Let's say somebody that has been they've got a relatively established personal brand or products or services. They're doing really well. They have plans for the future, and sales are coming in thick and fast, but they are drowning, and they're starting to realize that they can't do it all themselves, whether that's because they've got too much to do on a day-to-day basis, or whether they've not got a plan of how they're going to get to that next stage, or they've not got the people in place to be able to take the pressure off so that they can actually build the next stage rather than focusing on what's pulling them back, the day-to-day stuff of here and now. So that's often where we start talking to clients, and that's a quite common problem actually. Often it starts with the strategy. If I'm being honest, is there a clear plan on where you're going and what you need to do to get there? And that's often where we will start with working with clients, so that we can understand what their current position basically.
No, that makes sense. And I guess for anyone listening to this who might be new to business or have kind of in the very early points of this potential growth and ridiculous business that some of us may have experienced over time, is there things that people can do to almost like pre-steps to getting things in place? Well, you might not be looking to do the outsourcing at that particular time, the things you can do that makes it a little bit easier further down the line?
Definitely. And one of the first pieces of advice that I give to people when I'm talking to them, even before they start working with us, or when I'm networking with people, is from day one, try and get out of your own head. Be clear on, when you're doing things, document them, document those processes, because you're basically helping your future self. If you are already documenting things from the start, then you are not going to be drowning in those things when you are ready to bring somebody on. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be really simple, such as checklists or a little video where you're screen sharing how you do certain things, or you might prefer to write it down in a little document. Some people like a how-to guide, how to whatever my business is, that type of thing. It doesn't need to be complicated. But when you get out of your own head and put those instructions down somewhere, you're helping your future self and your future team, hopefully, to be able to get on board and manage that for you quickly and efficiently.
That makes sense, and me and Sarah have been through this process previously, and I think I admit it's really difficult because you've kind of got these ways of doing things in your head, which make sense in your head, and often they do work. But one of the things is once you get it out of your head and almost write it down, or however you do that, you realise actually there might be a better way. So there's a real benefit there before you even actually bringing someone in. I think that's one of the things I found anyway.
Definitely, because when you can see it in front of you, oh, I'm doing these in this order. Well, hang on a second. If I change the order of that might make it even faster or more efficient, or I can cut out a step. So definitely, that's a great first starting point.
Yeah, and so I've come to you and said, Sarah, my business is growing. I'm drowning. I need help, please. What's I guess step by step? What do you do to kind of help that person get themselves in a better position?
So we like to start off with an operational strategy to understand where your business is right now, where you're trying to get to, who's in the business currently, how you're doing things. The truth is that every business is held up by the same key pillars. And so when we break those down, we can start to understand what needs to be underneath those pillars to hold your business up, and what is missing and what then needs to be done. So once we've got a strategy and a plan, then we can work from that with you, and then start to understand, okay, well, these are things that Mike needs to do because it's your vision and it's your plan of where you're going. These are things that Mike doesn't need to do, such as let's put a system in place to automate that part of it, or let's outsource that because you just don't need to be spending your time doing certain things that are that are time consuming in that respect. So we start off with a strategy and a plan, because that will then lead us to wherever else we need to be, whether it is people or processes or platforms or professional growth, whatever it might be.
No, absolutely. And I guess kind of the second part of the title of this is around building a team as well. And I guess it'd be interesting to know the challenges of that. I've been through that myself, so I probably understand that a little bit, but kind of getting more of your experience, what things that, because it's kind of two things that are very interconnected, aren't they? That scaling your business. Your business is growing, and therefore you need more of a team. And so it'd be interesting to know like the
yeah, so again, let's just go back to the strategy, because one of the things that the strategy sessions help us to understand is what gaps there are in the business. So what is it that you need? What's missing? It might be your marketing that's missing. It might be you need more automation. It might be that you need somebody to help you with your admin. So that strategy piece is very, very important, because it helps us to understand what is there and what isn't there. Now, when you've got that information, then you can obviously start to think about what this new team comprises of. Where is it that you need the help most, and be able to prioritize around that. So you might know that you need PR, but that might not be top of the priority list right this second. That might be planned for 3 or 6 months down the line. Right now, it might be somebody to help you with the admin, or it might be a bookkeeper, or it might be that if you could just automate a couple of your processes, that you can take a lot of pressure off yourself. So the strategy piece is so important, because it gives you the clarity on who you need to move forward to start building that growth and building the people.
No, absolutely. And I think that's one of the most challenging areas, isn't it, when you're growing your business, is around the people, because so many variables that come into it when that
yeah.
So, like you said, the right people, obviously, but also the right things you are getting them to do.
Absolutely. So when you've identified exactly what it is that you need those people to do, then you can start to look around. Now, if you are not ready to employ, which a lot of growing small businesses aren't, then obviously that's where you can look to outsource. And it's really important that part of this process you are hiring for a good culture fit, because if you don't have a good cultural fit with your team, it's just not going to work. And they need to be eager to grow with you, and embrace changes and learn things new, just like you need to embrace changes by bringing people on. And that's really, really important, because when we're all open-minded about it and eager to make changes and help each other, then We'll adopt best practices, we'll look at new softwares, we'll look at meeting all the business requirements from everybody's different perspectives. And it's amazing what you can learn when you sort of take the when you take a step back and learn to delegate to your team and ask them for their advice as well, because they may know better than you, they may have better ways of doing things or different experience and ideas, and that's okay, because none of us know everything.
Certainly don't know everything, unfortunately.
We'd like to think that we could.
Yeah, I'm more than aware that I don't. So you mentioned there about systems, automation, kind of software, that type of thing. And I think that's one of the, I always kind of feel it's almost a minefield on that, because there's so much out there. And there's actually there's so many really good things out there, but it's choosing the right things to work for you, because sometimes automating a task is good, sometimes it isn't. And
correct.
So how important is that, and how do you get to that decision?
So it's a difficult question. If it is a difficult question, I think that it depends on how quickly you need things doing and how many steps there are in the process. And I think that the longer the process is, the more worthwhile it is looking at whether that can be automated or not. Because if you're doing something that takes 35, 40 steps, if half of those can be automated, that's half the amount of time that can be saved. So I think it's worthwhile sort of understanding what is it that's the most time consuming, the most clunky, and how can we make that better for everybody, whether it is behind the scenes, whether it's part of the customer journey. So for example, if you are onboarding customers onto a program or a membership, can we make that nice and smooth so that there is less work to be done behind the scenes, but the customer has a really smooth journey through that? What automation can be brought on? And that's the type of sort of thing that I would say that is good to look at.
No, absolutely. And I guess, like I said, there's lots of systems out there, and everyone will be different depending on your business. But it'd be interesting to kind of find out, and maybe some of the more common ones that whether you use or you've seen other people use that could be used by quite a lot of people. That's the other thing. Everyone's not always aware of these things that are out there. What good things?
Yeah.
I have to be. I find out something new every week about some system, and whether I use it or not is not relevant, but sometimes I know they are out there, which helps.
I think, again, a very difficult question to answer, because a lot of platforms have their own have the ability to automate in themselves. Now, really worthwhile pointing out that a lot of platforms you can start out with free. They may have limited functionality, but they may allow you to automate certain parts of your processes. I think what happens is, as you grow, as you get bigger, then either you continue to use those platforms or you move on to different ones. Going back to what you said about, is there one that could work for everybody? Yes. I think if you use lots of different websites and software in your business, have a look at Zapier, because Zapier is a great intermediary that links everything together. So it doesn't matter how many steps there are in there. You basically, it's the if this then that automation and functionality. So when this happens, do this, and then do that, and then do that. And actually that can help link a lot of platforms together, which can be very, very helpful for people. What is useful to note, though, is that sometimes if you're not paying a subscription to a different platform, then Zapier may not be able to help you. It's very, very clever that sometimes the functionality is limited if you're not paying sort of premium for a premium service.
Yeah, and I guess that's where someone like yourself comes into. We need to do this job within our business. Is it better to automate it? Is it better to outsource it, or is it better to manually do it? Because there's no one right or wrong answer, but it's each time, isn't it?
Absolutely, and you have to look at each process on its own merit and what the outcome of it is. There may be things that are just better off being done manually, because it gives you can control certain things better, and also you may want to be able to customize them. So if you are onboarding people, for example, you might not necessarily want the same message to go out to everybody. You might want it to be certain personalized. So I think you do have to look at each individual element on its own merit.
No, absolutely. Now, obviously, you are pro outsourcing, and it goes without saying what you do. But I guess it's kind of almost like a bit like my first question. This is what issues potentially are there to outsourcing? Where has it maybe not worked? What things have people done where it's not worked well? Because it won't always work, will
Yeah.
it? And it'd be,
No,
obviously,
it won't always work. And I think that one of the a really important point is that when you are building your team, that you should share your vision with your team. So what we often find is that clients or people are working, they are starting to slowly expand, and they may have taken on one subcontractor to do this, one subcontractor to do that. But everybody's working their own individual little pockets. They're not all working together for the end result. So I would always advise that the vision of the business is shared with the team so that everybody can understand their part in it. Because when you share your goals and results and the vision and working together, you're naturally going to be more collaborative and to reach that common purpose, which is what we all want at the end of the day. You want to feel like you're making a difference. So as a business leader, as an entrepreneur, share that information. Honestly, it will make a huge difference, and the value that you will get from your team will be higher because everybody understands the part they play.
No, absolutely. And actually, one question I had written down here was, how important is communication? So you kind of answered that there.
It's almost like you can see my notes, Mike. It's very strange. So communication is absolutely essential. I cannot stress this enough. If you don't communicate, then you are not going to get the same results. You have to be open. You have to understand what's working, whether there are issues. Share your opinions on things to improve things, and be positive, because when you're positive with positive communication, teams will flourish and they'll tackle projects together. Whereas if you're critical with things all the time because maybe people are doing things in a way that you haven't communicated, then you won't see the value in expanding and seeing your team, and you're never ever going to move forward from where you are. So communication, absolutely vital. Pick up on things as they happen. Don't leave things to fester and bubble underneath the surface. If you've got a problem, talk about it, because what you see as a problem actually might be a blessing in disguise that you haven't seen a different perspective.
No, I'm going to ask, I guess, a similar question to what I asked at the start. Was about, I asked about if someone was starting right now or early days of the business, what would they do? Kind of, if, let's say we're a little bit further on the journey and they've kind of not done those steps, and things are all a bit of a mess, and the person's about to lose their mind with it all. What kind of things what would you do? What conversations would you be having to help them bring that back? Because obviously it probably needs to happen relatively quickly, and maybe a little bit quicker than it would in the earlier example that I used.
Yeah. So I think it's breaking things down and going back to basics, isn't it? It's about understanding where the biggest problems are and why those are happening, and allowing a different perspective to come in. So, if you're really struggling with handling a particular problem, then share that with your team and ask if someone's got a better idea, or share that with the person that you are looking to hire, because they may have a good idea on how to handle that for you. What often happens, particularly with people who are less experienced with working with a team, or this is new to them, is that they like to have control of everything because they've done it all themselves up until now. That's absolutely natural. But when they are willing to share and talk about it, all of a sudden that one little problem that they had that was causing them such angst becomes no longer a problem, because somebody else is sharing the pain, and also the showing the challenge of dealing with it to move forward. So all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, that isn't an issue anymore, so now let's move on to the next thing. So it's really breaking it down and building up again from scratch. But it doesn't mean that everything has to be painful. It really doesn't.
No, absolutely. And yeah, I think the word you used there was really interested me in that answer, was about control. I think for many of us people who run a business, it's the hardest thing, isn't it, to pass over some control. And I think there's probably maybe it's a cultural thing, or just a natural instinct to, look, I'm growing, I want to get my business to the next level, I will go and employ someone. Because whilst you are losing some control, it feels like you can control that a bit more, whereas outsourcing it almost feels like it's dropping out. And I would imagine you've encountered that, where people feel a bit more of an angst to it. Would that be fair?
Yes, and I think that there are pros and cons to both employing and outsourcing. So what I would say to you is, let's just take a step back for a second. When when a business has a gap that they need to fill, they're ready to grow their team, they often have this circular shaped gap in front of them that they know that they need somebody to fulfill the tasks that are in there. Okay. So let's say that they employ somebody to fill that gap, and it's all working brilliantly. But then in 2 or 3 months' time, another gap opens up, and it's a different shape to the one that you've just recruited for. And that employee might not have the skill set for that particular new gap that's opened up. That might be triangular shaped, not circle shaped. And all of a sudden, this employee is having to do things that are outside of their skill set, outside of their comfort zone, and they're not necessarily doing the best job that the business needs, because the business only has enough funds to be able to fund one employee. Let's say that. The difference with outsourcing is that when you have a team of different experts, understanding that they have the right person for the right job means that actually it doesn't matter what shape these problems are. They could be circular, they could be triangular, they could be square. Actually, they might all need a different person to fulfill that need. And so I think that what's really important is that you can have the same relationship with an outsourced team as you can with an employee. You can still have the control, you can still have the visibility, provided that you are clear on what the goals are, you are clear about your vision, you're clear about the roles that everybody plays, you communicate well, it's process driven. When you've got all those things in place, it really doesn't need to make a difference. And you also have the flexibility as well, so that you can scale up or scale back should you need to. And I think that's the key.
And I guess that's even more relevant nowadays. Obviously, one of the things that the pandemic has accelerated is kind of people working remotely anyway. So actually having a remote outsourced team as opposed to somebody employed, obviously it is still slightly different, but it's less different.
I mean, we work with clients, and we've been working with clients, some very long-term clients, and to their outside audience, they would never know that we are an outsourced team. For all intents and purposes, we become our client's team. It doesn't matter whether we're employed, whether we're contracted. It really makes no difference, because the communication is shared, the vision is shared. We are working towards one goal. So it really doesn't make that difference, and it doesn't need to be. We don't need to be in house. We don't need to be sitting around a desk together. We communicate anyway. It's all great.
Do you think that kind of the outsourcing kind of the impression from the outside, maybe people have never done it before, is that when we say outsourcing, we mean doing it to using, whether it's sites like the Fivers of this world, or I can't remember the other ones.
Yes.
Overseas type thing where you really, there's maybe communication issues, there's time differences, there's just that. Is there a kind of an impression?
A little bit, and I think you have to be really careful. I'm not going to go and advocate using sites like Fiverr or any of these other sites, simply because you don't have the same control especially as soon as you go abroad. So if you have, you should be expecting that the people that you bring on board should either be signing a contract of yours, but more likely you're going to be signing a contract of theirs if they're set up professionally and properly, because at the end of the day, they are also running their own business, and it's in their best interests to make sure that they are serving you to the best of their ability, because they need to have insurance, for example, because what happens if something goes wrong? They need to be registered with the ICO for data protection. They need to be registered with any other relevant bodies. So all these things are really key, and I suppose that gives you that should give you courage and also the reassurance that it doesn't matter whether they are employed or contracted, if all those things are in place and you've got good terms and conditions. The minute you start going abroad, you've lost that and you've got no comeback. And it works for some business models, but I don't recommend that for the majority of people I'm speaking to.
Yeah, because I think probably the thing that kind of maybe for a lot of people that put outsourcing in front of them was the book, The 4-Hour Working Week.
Yes.
Which is it's an interesting book, and I think it's one of those things actually not to be taken literally from reading it myself. It's more the idea of it and concept of it, not the actual literal outcome. And I think maybe that's what people think it is, versus the reality.
Yeah. And I just want to pick up on one point actually that I'd made a note about. And I think there's also, this is probably the most important thing, that when you are growing a team, as a business owner, you need to understand that you cannot delegate your entire business to other people. And we have seen this happen. So let's say, Mike, that you bring our team on board and you go, right, okay, well, I need you to do this, 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 and this. And by the way, I'm off. See ya. And I'm not going to respond to your emails very quickly, and I'm not going to answer questions, and you make all the decisions. It's all fine. Do you think I'm going to know what's in your head? The answer is I'm not. I can do a pretty damn good job. My team can do a pretty damn good job. But ultimately, the passion about what you are growing needs to come from you. And you can't expect a team to grow something without your leadership. And it's absolutely fine to bring on a right-hand person and the people to fulfill certain positions in the business. But ultimately, you can't take an entire step away from your business and take away that sort of thought leadership and expect everybody else to run it for you. And I do sometimes see that as being a challenge in my industry. Okay, I've outsourced it. That's fine. I don't need to be involved. I'm afraid to break it to you, but you sort of do. It's a two-way street. We can do the best job we can do when the passion and the vision from the top is there. If it's not, are we going to be, are our ideas going to be matched? I think that's a really important point.
Yeah, and it's kind of that difference, isn't it, between everybody in their business will have, I guess, should we say, the strategic side of the thinking side, as you said, the directional vision, all that kind of stuff side of the business. And then you've got the task side, the doing side of it.
Yeah.
And it's about, because that obviously outsourcing the doing is what you can do.
Absolutely fine, 100%.
Absolutely can do. It's the thinking and vision. It's not that the people doing it aren't thinking about what they're doing, but they've got a set way of doing it. You need to, things, it evolves as well. Just because you are saying we need to do it this way today, likelihood in
6 months' time it'll be different. Yeah, 100%. It'll be different, exactly. And so that's why, as a team, you all need to communicate together, particularly from the top. Has something changed? Does that plan need to be realigned? Do we need to be working on something different? Do we need to do things in a different way? Are we promoting a different product? It's all these different elements that combine and make a business successful. And without that connectivity, it won't happen.
Absolutely. I think one thing I was thinking about when you were talking there as well is about, obviously, there's loads of different types of businesses, and is there any particular ones where outsourcing works better or worse? So whether it's, I don't know, difference between B2B and B2C, or difference between service industries, and I don't know, there's a difference between someone who runs a marketing agency and a plumbing business, as an example. Is there any way it works better or worse, or is it just about reacting to that situation?
I think from my experience and my perspective, I think it's about mindset and open-mindedness as to how things can be done. I think any business can be managed remotely with a remote team in whatever format that looks like, whether it's employment or whether it's contracted team. I think it's about understanding that it doesn't have to be done by, look, at the end of the day, if you're in a call center, obviously you need to be sometimes at a specific desk doing a specific thing. If you're behind the counter of a shop, you can't have somebody remote doing that. But if you're a service-based business, then the chances are a remote team would work exactly the same as any other team. You don't necessarily need to have an office space. In fact, I'm seeing more and more businesses, agencies, growing businesses taking away that commercial space and having a completely open team based all around the country. And that's okay if it works. It's all about the mindset of the people at the top and how willing they are to try it.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I don't think anyone denies it when you first do anything like that. It's not easy, because often good things aren't easy either. But if I know what a difference it's made to me being able to know that certain parts of what we need to do are boxed off, and I don't need to worry about them on a day-to-day basis. Yes, I need to, as you quite rightly point, I need to think strategically about them and alter them
and make decisions about them as well, because like, as we said, things change. So ultimately that decision has to come from you as a business. But does it matter where the people are behind the scenes? Not really, provided that you've communicated.
No, absolutely. So one last question for me, Sarah, actually, is just, and it's kind of more of a really, really general open question, really, is if someone's watching this and they're thinking, I could do with doing X, Y, and Z. Is there any kind of hints and tips? I know I kind of asked this question a little bit earlier, but is there anything that you could say to people just to start thinking about to help them start this journey? And this journey might be, it might be to email you now saying, Sarah, please help me.
Of
Or
course.
it might be I might need Sarah's help in 2 years' time.
Yeah.
Both of them's fine. Isn't it kind of a few things that people start thinking about, even if it's not actually doing anything yet?
So I would suggest, first of all, track your time with the things that you do, because when you track your time for a consistent period, you will see where your time is being leaked or where it's worth you spending more time in a particular area. So that's something that can be quite easy. There's platforms out there that you can track your time on, or you could just use a simple spreadsheet to sort of, break your day up into half-an-hour blocks. I think that's really important, and do that for 2-3 months, see how you're getting on. The other thing is that I would take a really good long hard look at your business and the things that you're doing and decide where it is that you are frustrated. Are you frustrated because you're spending too much time on it? Are you frustrated because the process seems clunky? Are you frustrated because it's holding you back from doing certain things? So what are those things that are causing you frustration? And make a list of those. And have a look at, if you break down sort of the value of your time as well, is it worth you doing all those things? Or can you sort of start to make a list of, actually, I can see 5 or 6 things that can be done on a monthly basis by somebody else that will free me up 3-4 hours a week so that I can go and make more sales, or I can go and create a new product or service, or I can, go networking and that type of thing. So I think if you can start to do those from earlier on, it will definitely help at the time when you are ready to bring somebody in.
That makes sense. And I have to say, one of the biggest takeaways I've taken from I've noted down here is around sharing your strategy. It's very relevant because we're recording this towards the end of 2022, and I'm doing that work at the moment about the future business strategy. Is once I've done that, to be sharing that with lots of different people. And obviously that's relevant for me, and everyone will have different people it's relevant for.
Of course, yes.
That's a big thing that I've taken from that as well.
I hope it's been useful for you.
Oh, no, absolutely. And I guess, final question, if people want to find out a little bit more about what you do, your team do, where's the kind of best places to go and look and find you? So
you can find me on LinkedIn. You'll be able to find me, Sarah Small, a Digital Me. Equally, you can go to my website, adigitalme.co.uk, and all my details will be on there for you to get in touch and we can have a chat.
Yeah, we'll put all the notes, the show notes as well. We'll have all the details for Sarah, and both a LinkedIn and website and all that kind of stuff as well. So you'll be able to find it there. So finally, just thank you very much, Sarah, for your time. I've got. That's my notes. I know no one can actually read that, but that's my notes I've taken. So you've created more jobs for me, but that's fine. They'll create less jobs for me in the future.
Absolutely, they will. And thank you very much for having me. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you, Sarah.
I hope you enjoyed this chat today, and like me, you learned something new from our wonderful expert. So if you'd like to hear from more of our sessions, please subscribe on whatever platform that you get your podcast from to hear more. And also, we'd love to meet you at some point at one of our upcoming events. The Northern Affinity hold events all across the north of England, and we'd love to meet new people and have guests along. So please come along and check out our website or all the details in the show notes. Thank you very much for listening, and see you next time.